In today's video, I'll show you how I use the software Stitch Saga and all the functions you could use within it. So if you're interested in seeing that, please continue watching. In today's video, I'm going to demonstrate how I use my favorite cross-stitch tracking app, Stitch Saga. This is sort of a tutorial, but also just a how do I use this app. There's multiple ways of stitching, hence there is a million ways of using this app for your benefits. I'll go through basically all the buttons and all the things you can change in order to make this app work for you. And that's mainly what I love so much about it. It is very versatile and you can really tailor it to your needs and make it work for you. So I hope you're interested. If so, carry on watching. We'll go to the overhead screen where you'll see my iPad where I'm demonstrating the app. Thank you for watching. Okay, so let me show you guys around within the Stitch Saga app. So we left off with the first video by importing the chart we converted together. But I would like to show you the app on a chart that I created just so I'm not showing off data that isn't mine. So let me show you actually how you import just via the import cloud here. So you can go to whatever folder you have your stuff in. Mine's on my drive and I'm going to import my Lara chart because I did chart that one myself. So, and this one actually still has some progress in. I'm just going to put it right at the very end so I know that's the one we've been messing around with. Right from the get-go, when you open the app, you get this overview of all your projects. You come into the main stack that is right here. And you won't have any other stacks. So you have the option of first just organizing within your stack to move those charts around however you want, but you can also create in the end just subfolders right here where you can create a new stack and drop your charts in there. You can kind of select a bunch and then move them to a different kind of stack, you know, and organize your charts however you like. I like to have them sorted by closest to completion in the first spot to least percentage done, just because you see it right away on those little heart icons there. And yeah, that's how I like to organize them. And now let's just go into a chart. So let's just go in and see how everything is in here. So when you import a chart, I think it all got it back to the default setting. I'm not quite sure, but you see the chart basically as full view as you can in the texture view. So if we zoom in just a little bit, you can see that it actually simulates actual stitches. You do see all the threads. And if you were to have half stitches, you would obviously only see like a half stitch. So it gives a very cool simulation of how your finished chart looks like. It even has the texture of your fabric, which you can play with. So that is one of the menu items here. Let me expand this real quick. So it's this item here. I don't know how you call that, a color pin. I don't know. I would have to look up that word. So you can change the color of your fabric, which is really neat for non-full coverage, obviously. I mean, we full coverage stitcher usually stitch on white fabric, but you can simulate different colors and see how your chart would look like. And you can also actually change the fabric. I am, for instance, stitch on Lugana, and you can also say if you're stitching over, this is over 2 right now, or even over 3. I'm stitching over 1. So I get a very realistic kind of preview of how my stitch chart would look like, which I really, really like that a lot. So that is this view. And as you guys know, I really like to stitch in my stitching area. So this one is set quite big. You can also actually shuffle between the texture view and non-texture view with 4-finger tap, which is really nice. Let me make this area just a little bit smaller so you guys can see better. So yeah, because one thing I want to show you, so the way this is kind of laid out, you always have on the top left, you have the entire menu of all your DMC colors. And you can see right here, if you have this area selected, it'll only show you the colors that are within that area. If you turn this one off, you get the full list of all the colors in the chart. And usually it sorts it by a DMC code, but you can also have different sorting options. If you like to stitch with the color with the most stitches first and stuff, then you have it sorted that way. It'll put the 310 up top because that's the main color in this chart, 43,000 stitches. And so yeah, then it would just go to the next color with the next highest amount of stitches, which is actually also something. And oh yeah, with the rockets real quick, you can go to the top of the list or the bottom of the list, whatever the top and bottom is according to your sorting. And you also have this auto jump function, which is what happens if you turn this one on. It would, once you finish a certain color, it would jump then to whatever is set it here. You can jump to the maximum stitches left, minimum stitches left, or to just the next DMC number. I don't do this. I can just quickly show you how that would work. So if we set it by the number, currently we have the 310, and let's say I magically just stitched all the colors. Oh, sorry. Ooh, I finished the whole chart. Well, that was not what I wanted. See, there's a return. Isn't that awesome? You obviously need to activate that color first. So you can just choose it and cycle through the color. But if you want to actually see the color and mark it up, you can also, because we don't have any 310 here, we can drive to the color and it'll drive us to the next stitch that is unstitched from where we are. And then we can just finish all the 310 and then it jumps to the next DMC number because that's what we had it set to, right? In that case, it jumps to the first in the list. I actually would have expected it to jump to 311 if I'm quite honest. Hang on, what happens if we complete this one now? It jumps to 2. Okay, so it just jumps to the next DMC number, which makes sense if we do by number. If we have max, it'll just jump to the next highest amount of stitches left. Sorry, I have a goal thing turned on here. Maybe stop that so we don't get all the pinging here. But yeah, you can always press return and reverse your actions, I think from within the day. I never tried going back multiple days. I haven't tried that. I have this turned off. I don't like this automatic jumping. I can show you why, but that's basically all you can do here. Actually, one more thing you can do here, you can change everything about these colors. So if you long press on this edit icon here, you can change the color of how it's just represented in the chart. So if we go to some of the black, here I have some completed black stitches. You can just make them green or pink or purple or whatever. I don't know why you would want that. I would like to have it black because it's black. But you can also change the symbol and make it whatever you like, whatever makes you see it better. You can change the color of those symbols. You can play around with that. There have been situations where I felt like I want to change. And you can also change the strands of thread you're using. It goes up to 12, which basically only affects the calculation of the amount of thread that is being used in the chart. I'll show you that later, but I'm just going to leave it at 2. Okay, so that's this menu. Then you have this movable menu, which is basically your main stitching menu. So again, we already looked at the car. It just focuses on the next unstitched stitch. We have the bucket, which will complete all. Didn't I turn this one off? Okay. which will complete all the stitches. But if you actually switch this around, you can also rip out all the stitches. Yeah, again, return or repeat. Then you can lock. That means you can't mark off stitches. You move the picture around with one finger. If you have this unlocked, you move the picture around with two fingers and you mark off. Hang on, I have the eraser on. You mark off with one finger. Or you rip out with one finger. So that's this menu, and you can just make this smaller too. I always have this open. And I usually have the locking mechanism on because the way I like to stitch actually is, hang on, let's just look at this. Let's go through this one by one, otherwise I'll just forget. So you can customize this aside toolbar here with this icon. So you can reduce it and you can maximize it. And if you long press on it, you can just say which symbols you would like to see in the maximum version and in the minimum version. So I always just have the ones that I'm most likely to use. Basically, I just reduce it down to that I see all the symbols. That is reduced enough to me. And yeah, but if you do need to get into one of the other ones, you can quickly expand this. Then this is the eye, which is the texture view. This one cycles you through the next color in your list. Oh, that one is dependent on the list. That is interesting as well. I didn't know that, because if you sort this list by the number, then it just jumps to the next DMC number. So whatever order you have this, it'll just jump up and down in the list. That's good to know. I always have it by DMC order, so I don't really know necessarily all the features. The light bulb, actually, I don't know why I have that in all my tools, because I never use this. Basically just switches around the view. So this corner, as you guys know, is what I have stitched. So in this view, you subtract from everything you see, and in this view, you add to everything you see. I use this because that's what I was used to when I was still stitching with Pattern Keeper, and that's what I just kind of kept. So that's just personal preference, I guess. Is there anything that happens when you long press? No. Okay, and then this one is the stitching window, right? And I've already shown you, you can change the size by pressing on these sides, but you can actually also kind of push in the corners, which is where kind of neat. I did that when I was trying to stitch on diagonals, as you guys know. So you can just kind of mark your diagonal. And what happens then in this list gets reduced to only the colors that you're using when you're stitching on that area, which is also nice when you're like traveling or something, you know, you're not going to stitch way more than that. And then you can kind of reduce the number of flosses you want to bring, for instance. But it also shows you, and then we have this bracket view that appeared. So within the bracket, the little number shows you the amount of stitches left off that color. And the one in the back remains. That's the total in the chart remaining. So some of these colors I already have completed. So we have them zeroed out in the entire chart. And all these functions and jumping to max color and min color will then only happen within your area and not the entire chart, which is also really, really neat. So that's how I stitch. I usually just have my square, but just to show you, when you long press on here, you can also set this to this zigzaggy, what's it called? Side. And you can change how deep you want to have those zigzags. I don't use this, but you could, and you can move them around. It's crazy what you can do on all sides and whatnot. I don't use this, so I have it on this setting, or you can also just totally turn that off if you're not using that at all. Oh, but then the whole thing is turned off. Interesting. Okay. And you can change the color of the box. You can also, that's also personal preference, because I actually like, you can totally black out everything that's around. So you're actually just focused. You don't see anything else. That's when you like to stitch sharp pages, for instance. I don't. I like to finish my thread, so I actually just open it up completely. I don't gray out the outside at all, because what I do, and I can just show you whatever. Let's say I'm working on the number 300. So they're highlighted here. I start stitching probably here and then stitch my way down. And then I can say I did all those stitches, but I probably haven't finished my thread. So I will go down here and stitch those stitches. And then I use the Lasso tool. I love this feature. And just include those stitches, and then I complete those as well. So this basically just draws a new area. The color is really hard to see, so maybe let's make this a bit, whatever, blue as well. Duplicate button to Markup toolbar. Oh, you can also show it up here, but I don't really need that. I always have the side. I think that's maybe more important if you're working on a phone where you don't have as much space. I think that might be a bit more useful, all these editing functions. And the cool thing is, once you made this area, you can drag the entire thing around. It's really, really neat. I love this. But yeah, you can just turn all these things off. The only thing is, if you once turn the lasso tool off, you lose that shape. Like if you turn the square off, it always opens up the same thing and where you were last. But if you close the lasso tool, you lose whatever you drew. So you draw it once, and if you don't like it, you have to kind of redraw it. But yeah, it's really cool. The next item in the list is the stats, which is really, really nice. So we just ripped out a bunch of stitches, but basically you just see how many stitches you did in a full day. It does not separate out in single sittings, but you get it per day, and you see the total here. If you select all, you see the total amount of stitches, but I find that very neat for whatever, when I do my podcast, I can just mark the ones I did since my last podcast, and then I see how many stitches I did to tell you guys. You can even go in here. This chart only has full cross stitches, but it would break it up in back stitches and whatever, French knots and stuff like that. Here you see the progress on your chart, so 5.42%. And here you see the total amount of stitches, the amount you did, and then how many you have left. Same with the total number of colors. And actually, if you turn your little area on, you also see the stats within your area, right? How many solid colors you have left and how many stitches you have done and left, vice versa. What's the paint thing here? I don't know. Nothing happens here. I guess it has something to do with this. Erase. Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're, instead of, I guess that's why it's called paint. You're either painting in or you're erasing out. I'm painting in. Okay, so that's the stats. Maybe I should open up. Oh yeah, we skipped this one. I don't use this. The smiley face, that basically just means all the done stitches turn into the same color, which you can change that color. But I like to just have the simulation of what it will look like. So I turn that one. I have that. I just don't work with that one. Then we have this, which is the goals. We already heard that thing kind of going off. So you can set any kind of goal target. I want to stitch 620 stitches because somebody was first in technical. And here you can say how you want to count. Count by marathon basically just means that half stitches are a half stitch and full cross are a full cross, and back stitch is counted in a specific way. I couldn't actually tell you exactly how. The sprint function basically just measures the time and gives you an average, how many stitches you did in an hour. And you can also say once you're done with that goal, it could start it says a similar goal, but it basically just starts exactly the same goal again. So I don't have that because, especially with my Great British Bake Off stitching, I usually have different amounts. But if you're always like stitching 500 stitches or something, you could turn this on, and as soon as you complete 500, it would start another goal for 500. So yeah, we can start that one, and then this is counting. You can have multiple ones going on, and you can pause them. That's, I guess, only interesting for your sprint function if you don't want to mess up your hourly average, I guess. And yes, but you can also go in, is that the next? No, that's in the stats actually. You can shuffle into the sprints. Like all these ones, I guess I had the start a similar goal thing turned on. So you can just delete those. But yeah, or you can also delete started goals. You can also start new ones, but here you can only start new sprints, which basically virtually just measures the time and tells you an average. Yes. Okay, so that's that. And you can always have that going here. You can make that bigger and smaller, depending on how much room you have on your screen, I guess. And then we can go into this one quickly. Here you can basically just say what fabric you're stitching on. Let's say I'm stitching on a 32 count. Am I stitching over 1, or am I stitching over 2, or am I stitching over 3? That all just influences your thread calculation. So if you have a chart and you want to kit it up yourself and you want to do the full kit right from the get-go, this is really useful. Then you can give it all the settings that you have. And then you can choose if you want this number to represent what? A skein of floss. How many skeins do I need? If you're starting really from 0, or if you have a master set like I do, I usually just want to know how many meters do I need. And then I can, because one of my strands is 1 meter, so I know how many strands I need to do. Or if you're doing yards, you could do yards. And yeah, you can also, these numbers could also subtract what you already did. So if you're running out of a color and you want to know how many more you need to get to complete that chart, you can do that. And you can also play around with the extra expense that basically is all these calculations obviously can only see the front of the fabric. They don't know how much you travel and stuff. I don't really have any experience with that value, so 77 is the default. I don't know. Again, I can't really tell you what is good and what is bad here. That's just something you learn over time, I think, how accurate that is. And I'm not really keeping track of that, so I guess I will not really develop a feeling for that, to be honest. But yeah, I think that is all here. I think you can send this to you actually. Yeah, via email, you could send this thread list, using list, and then you can take it shopping right to you. Or you can also save it as a PDF document, I guess. Yeah, you just see the dimensions of your chart. This is in centimeters. I remember changing this from inches right at the very beginning, but I had a quick look before and I couldn't find where I changed that. But if you want to change this to inches, you can have a look around. It is somewhere. Hopefully. I hope I'm not remembering something wrong. We already looked at the canvas play around thing here, so we don't need to do this one again. This is kind of neat. I use that more in non-full coverage charts, I guess. Is there any block stitches here? There. Oh, but I have them all. No, technically I have them on. Is it not showing to me? Oh yeah, it's because it only shows in the area. So this gives you little number tags. It's basically just how many stitches are in this case in a column, but you can also turn it on for a row. And then you just don't need a count. You just see and you see, okay, I need to do 7 stitches, and then you do your 7 stitches across or in a column. However you want to do it, you can have them on the right side, you can have them on the left side, and you can also change the colors. Just so, I guess it depends a little bit on what colors you're mainly stitching with. So it shows up, so you actually see the information you want to see, and that you can just quickly toggle on and off. This one is also really nice because the default setting, actually, I can show you what the default setting was of their markup. is like super thin black squares. Like maybe like this. And I don't know, that is not really a markup. I don't really see anything here. So, but yes, you can totally customize this. You can even fill it out completely and then it reverses that you still see your symbol. So that's really nice. And I came from Pattern Keeper, so I just got used to the Pattern Keeper view. So I have it to this bright green because that is a color that I rarely ever have showing up on a chart. So that's a good contrast for me. Here with the eye, you can basically make the markup more visible or less visible. Again, here you can say how much you want it to fill out. This kind of reduces the visibility of everything else around. I have that on full visibility. I have it set so it's closest to what I see on my fabric. And I think that's all you're kind of play around with here. This real quick is when you're doing parking. So you can have that turned on, and this was actually turned on. So let's say I parked my thread here. You just long press and then you create this mark. Then you know you have a parked thread there. And actually when you long press here, you can have the setting on or off. I would have it on, auto delete mark. That basically just means if you are stitching that stitch, that the mark vanishes. But I'm not really parking, as you guys know. This one is super neat, that plays around with basically how the grid is shown. The default actually shows the symbols on your stitches, but I like to turn that off. Then it's really clear what you've done and what you haven't done. And then you can turn on and off diverse grids. So this is the very small one. I would always have that on. This is the 5x5 grid, which you can view two different ways. And this is the 10x10 grid. Like I'm using easy guide, so I have this turned on, but I also have charts where I don't have easy guide, so I turn that off because then it's just distracting. But you can also put on like diagonals. If you're stitching in diagonals, you can have them go 4 different ways or turn them off. You can also do these staggered things. Again, different ways, different orientations. Yeah, so that's really nice. You can change the colors, whatever you want to do for everything I've just shown you. This, I don't really play around too much with. This basically just turns rulers on. So, you know, I don't know in what instance you would need to know if this is stitch 990. I guess it just gives you an orientation where you are. And I think the default puts the origin. Sorry guys, this is a big chart. Yeah, the default puts the origin in the top left corner, but you can also put it in the center. So everything counts out from the center. I think those 2 options. This thing turns on and off the center of your chart, which you can also move. Oh, hang on. Sorry, you can see that better if you're right here. So usually if you're starting in the top left corner, you would have your 10x10 square start like that, but you could move that around if you wanted to. Same this way, right? But that's what I was trying to show you before. If you have, where's the center line? Here. You can also move the center around. I don't know, put it on a 10x10 grid. If you're starting in the middle, right, then it would kind of make sense to have it start right on that 10x10 grid. So yeah, that is that. You can change the color like you can everywhere. Let me turn off those rulers. I don't really need those. It just crowds my screen. And the last thing that you can have turned on and off is a little navigation. There. That just shows you where you are in the chart, right? That you know what you're stitching on, basically. I don't have this turned on because it just takes up too much space. I like to see as much as possible, but to each their own. But yeah, that is, I think, all I meant to show you. Hang on, let's maybe quickly go into a non-full coverage chart. Where I can show you how it looks like when you have something else than full cross stitches, because we only saw the full cross stitches, but this chart also has French knots and backstitch. You can just turn those on and off so you see them. And if we have the backstitch, we can also turn the full crosses off if we wanted to. And yeah, and then you can just go in the backstitch. It highlights the backstitch. I don't want to show you too much of this chart because it's obviously not mine. But it kind of works the same. You can mark this off, or you can return. Yeah. It has a funky way of counting. I don't know. Check this, like 344. How much does this thing? So this is just one. So it does count one across as one stitch, and that's what the marathon is. This would be a one stitch in this case, even though a half stitch would only be 0.5, right? But yeah, we also have French knots. Let's see if we can move to one. Yay. So we can mark that off as well. We can mark this off. This is just an interesting way of showing, or why did I do that? I'm going around the chart now. Ooh, let's go back. There. Okay, can I go to the French knot again? There. I would like to mark this one off. Oh, okay. That took a minute. So I was trying to mark it off by swiping over. That doesn't work. You need to tap it. You can see I'm not doing French knots that often. But I have not done them, so I'm going to return that. And this is actually my chart here. But yeah, just so you see, and then if you go into here, hang on, let's just do one again. Just so you see in the statistics, right? Then it shows you how many French knots you did. And it would also tell you, let's go complete across, whatever. I'm just gonna remove one. It's just neat. It's just neat. It shows you in separate stitches, which I find helpful sometimes, but we want to return. Okay, good. So that's all. That's all. So I hope you like this program. I love it. I hope this was somewhat useful and not too combobulated. And maybe let's switch back to the front-facing camera. So yeah, that's how I use the app. I hope you found that useful. If you did, please do me a favor and maybe like this video and comment down below. Let other people know about this video so they can learn about this cool app. Because I would love if more people would start using this app, because that would make also the cross-stitch designers aware of this app and the need for people needing this format, because then you don't even need my other video, because if you found this interesting and now are like, okay, how do I get my PDF in there now? Maybe watch my tutorial on how to get the PDF into the Stitch Saga, where I'll show you exactly that. And yeah, show this video to anybody else who you think might like this. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in my next regular Flosstube update. Bye bye.